The crash. Lieutenant Sarah Chen's fingers danced across the holographic control panel of her small research vessel, the Curiosity. The ship hummed softly around her, its systems purring like a contented cat as it cruised through the inky void of space. Sarah's dark eyes, flecked with augmented reality displays, flicked between the streaming data feeds and the vast starfield visible through the ship's panoramic viewport. Curiosity's log, stardate 2184-156. Sarah spoke clearly, the ship's AI dutifully recording. We've entered the outer reaches of the Proxima Centauri system. Initial scans show a complex network of planetoids and moons orbiting the red dwarf star. Of particular interest is PC7, a moon exhibiting potential signs of microbial life. We'll be approaching for closer study in approximately 6 hours. She leaned back in her pilot's chair, a smile playing on her lips. This solo mission was the culmination of years of training and preparation. At 28, Sarah was one of the youngest xenobiologists ever to be entrusted with a deep space research expedition. The opportunity to be the first human to study potential alien life up close filled her with an excitement that bordered on giddiness. As the Curiosity continued its approach to PC7, Sarah busied herself with final equipment checks. Her sample collection drones were primed and ready, their delicate sensors calibrated to detect even the faintest signs of organic compounds. The ship's landing gear had been specially designed to minimize potential contamination of the alien environment. 3 hours to PC7 orbit, the ship's AI announced, its androgynous voice calm and modulated. Sarah nodded, reaching for her hydration pack. As she took a sip, a sudden jolt rocked the ship. Warning klaxons blared as red emergency lights bathed the cockpit in an ominous glow. "What the hell?" Sarah muttered, her training kicking in as her hands flew over the controls. Curiosity, status report. Multiple system failures detected. The AI responded, its voice now tinged with urgency. Unknown energy surge has compromised primary and secondary power relays. Life support stable, but propulsion and navigation systems are offline. Sarah's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. Every scenario, every potential failure had been accounted for in the mission planning. Yet here she was, hurtling through space in a ship that was quickly becoming little more than an elaborate coffin. Curiosity, reroute all available power to propulsion and life support. Initiate emergency protocols and broadcast distress signal on all frequencies. As the AI complied, Sarah fought to regain control of the ship. Through the viewport, she could see PC7 looming larger, its barren, rocky surface growing more detailed with each passing moment. What had initially been an object of scientific curiosity now represented her only hope for survival. Warning, the AI's voice cut through Sarah's concentration. Current trajectory will result in impact with PC7 surface in approximately 15 minutes. Sarah's jaw clenched. Curiosity, give me manual control. Divert all remaining power to heat shields and structural integrity. The ship shuddered as it entered PC7's thin atmosphere. Outside, the void of space was replaced by a strange, purple-tinged sky. Sarah's hands gripped the manual controls, her knuckles white with the effort of trying to level out the Curiosity's descent. Sweat beaded on her forehead as the ship's hull temperature climbed. The strange, alien landscape rushed up to meet her, a dizzying mix of jagged rock formations and vast, empty plains. Sarah searched desperately for a suitable landing zone, knowing that her chances of survival diminished with each passing second. Impact imminent, the AI announced, its voice unnervingly calm in the face of impending disaster. Brace for crash landing. Sarah took a deep breath, forcing herself to relax as much as possible. She had trained for this, spent countless hours in simulations preparing for worst-case scenarios. But all the training in the world couldn't fully prepare her for the reality of a crash landing on an alien moon. The first impact was jarring, rattling Sarah's teeth and sending shockwaves of pain through her body despite the crash webbing that held her securely in place. The Curiosity bounced once, twice, its hull screaming in protest as it scraped across the rocky ground. On the third impact, Sarah's head snapped forward, her vision blurring as it struck the padded headrest of her chair. Time seemed to stretch and distort as the ship carved a deep furrow into the alien soil. Sarah caught glimpses of the destruction through the viewports, pieces of the ship's hull peeling away, delicate scientific instruments reduced to twisted scrap in seconds. A part of her mourned the loss even as she fought to remain conscious. When the Curiosity finally groaned to a halt, Sarah found herself suspended in an eerie silence. The ship's systems were dark, the ever-present hum of machinery replaced by the soft hiss of ruptured pipes and the pinging of cooling metal. Curiosity. Sarah's voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Status report. No response came from the ship's eye. Sarah fumbled with the crash webbing, her movements clumsy as the adrenaline began to wear off. As the restraints fell away, gravity reasserted itself, and Sarah collapsed to the floor of the cockpit with a pained grunt. For several long moments, she lay there, cataloging her injuries. Her head throbbed, and a warm trickle down the side of her face told her she was bleeding. Her left arm screamed in agony when she tried to move it, possibly broken, definitely badly bruised. But she was alive, and that was more than she had dared hope for during the crash. Slowly, painfully, Sarah pulled herself to her feet. Emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the ruined interior of the Curiosity. She stumbled towards the main console, praying that some systems had survived the crash. A wave of despair washed over her as she surveyed the damage. The communication array was a total loss, a twisted mass of metal and circuitry. Without it, there was no way to call for help. The Curiosity's distress beacon might still be broadcasting, but in the vastness of space, it could be years before anyone picked up the signal. Sarah's scientific mind, always analyzing, always planning, began to assess her situation. She was stranded on an alien moon, millions of kilometers from the nearest human outpost. Her supplies, while designed for a multi-month mission, were finite. The alien environment was unknown, potentially hostile. Yet, as the initial shock began to wear off, Sarah felt a strange calm settle over her. She was a scientist, an explorer. This was an unprecedented opportunity to study an alien world up close. Yes, she was in danger. Yes, her chances of rescue were slim. But she was still breathing, still thinking. With trembling hands, Sarah reached for her personal datapad. Miraculously, it had survived the crash relatively unscathed. She activated it, the soft blue glow of its holographic display providing a comforting familiarity in the alien gloom. Personal log. Sarah began, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Earth Research Vessel Curiosity. I've crash-landed on the moon designated PC-7 following a catastrophic systems failure. The ship is a total loss, and communication systems are down. She paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. Survival is now my primary mission, but I'm a scientist, and as long as I'm here, I intend to carry out the mission I was sent to perform. This is a setback, not an end. Whatever this moon throws at me, I'll face it. And who knows, maybe I'll make the discovery of a lifetime in the process. With her log complete, Sarah began the arduous task of salvaging what she could from the wreckage. As she worked, her mind was already formulating plans, analyzing problems, seeking solutions. She was alone on an alien world, yes, but she was human, adaptable, resilient, and above all, curious. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Sarah Chen was determined to meet them head-on. The alien sun began to set as Sarah emerged from the wreckage, casting long, purple shadows across the strange landscape. She took a deep breath of the thin, alien air and squared her shoulders. This was just the beginning of her adventure on PC-7, and she intended to make the most of it. Alien environment. Lieutenant Sarah Chen's eyes squinted against the harsh, alien sunlight as she emerged from the twisted wreckage of her research vessel. The crash had left her with a throbbing headache and a nasty gash on her left arm, but she was alive. And that was more than she had hoped for during those terrifying moments of descent. As the dust settled around her, Sarah took in her surroundings. The alien moon's landscape was a stark contrast to the lush green earth she had left behind. Jagged, purple-hued rock formations jutted out from the ground like the teeth of some gargantuan beast. The sky above was a deep indigo, streaked with wispy, silvery clouds that seemed to move too fast for comfort. Sarah's scientific mind kicked into gear, momentarily overriding her fear and desperation. She reached for her datapad, miraculously still functional, and began to document her observations. Day 1 on unnamed moon, she dictated, her voice slightly raspy from the acrid air. Gravity approximately 0.8 Earth standard. Atmosphere breathable, but thin. Estimated 18% oxygen content. Temperature fluctuating rapidly between 10 and 30 degrees Celsius. As she spoke, Sarah noticed something peculiar about the ground beneath her feet. What she had initially mistaken for strange, metallic pebbles were actually tiny, iridescent organisms. They pulsed with a faint bioluminescence, creating a subtle, shifting pattern across the moon's surface. Correction. Sarah added to her log. Surface covered in unknown life forms. Possibly some form of extremophile lichen or fungi. Further study required. With her immediate surroundings documented, Sarah turned her attention to her dire situation. The crash had scattered debris over a wide area, and her survival would depend on salvaging what she could. She spent the next few hours gathering useful materials, twisted metal panels that could serve as shelter, remnants of her food and water supplies, and any intact scientific equipment. As she worked, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end, and occasionally she caught glimpses of movement in her peripheral vision. But every time she turned to look, there was nothing there but the strange, pulsing ground and the towering rock formations. By the time the alien sun began to set, casting long, purple shadows across the landscape, Sarah had managed to construct a rudimentary shelter using the ship's debris and some flexible, vine-like flora she discovered growing in the cracks between rocks. The strange plants were surprisingly sturdy, and when woven together, created a decent windbreak. As darkness fell, the temperature plummeted, and Sarah huddled in her makeshift home, shivering despite the thermal properties of her spacesuit. The night brought new wonders and terrors. The bioluminescent organisms on the ground glowed brighter, casting an eerie, shifting light across the landscape. In the distance, Sarah could hear strange, haunting calls, proof that larger life forms existed on this alien world. Sleep came in fits and starts, punctuated by the unfamiliar noises and the constant worry about her dwindling supplies. When dawn finally broke, Sarah emerged from her shelter, stiff and exhausted but determined to explore further. Her first priority was to find a water source. Her suit's recycling system would keep her alive for a while, but it wasn't a long-term solution. Sarah set out, datapad in hand, recording everything she saw. As she crested a ridge, Sarah gasped. Spread out before her was a vast network of what appeared to be artificial structures, half buried in the moon's surface. Geometric shapes, too regular to be natural, peeked out from under layers of the strange, bioluminescent growth. Day 2, Sarah recorded, her voice filled with awe. I've discovered evidence of an ancient alien civilization. Structures of unknown composition extend for several kilometers. Design suggests advanced architectural knowledge. Current state of ruins indicates the civilization has been defunct for an extended period, possibly thousands or even millions of years. Sarah's excitement overrode her caution, and she scrambled down the ridge towards the nearest structure. As she approached, she noticed that the bioluminescent organisms seemed to grow more densely around the alien ruins, pulsing with increased intensity. The structure itself was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. It appeared to be made of a dark, glossy material that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Despite its apparent age, there were no signs of erosion or decay. Sarah reached out to touch it, and to her surprise, the surface was warm and seemed to vibrate slightly under her fingertips. Material analysis inconclusive, she muttered into her datapad. Composition unknown. Displays properties inconsistent with known elements. Possible evidence of highly advanced technology. As Sarah explored the ruins, she began to notice patterns in the design of the structures. Certain symbols repeated, etched into the dark surfaces. She spent hours documenting these, hoping they might provide some clue about the long-lost alien civilization. Her exploration was cut short by a series of violent tremors that shook the ground. The bioluminescent organisms pulsed rapidly, their light intensifying to an almost blinding level. Sarah stumbled, nearly falling into a sudden fissure that opened up beneath her feet. Seismic activity detected. She gasped into her datapad as she scrambled to safer ground, possibly linked to the bioluminescent life forms. Correlation between tremor intensity and luminescence observed. As the tremors subsided, Sarah realized the danger of her current position. The ruins, while fascinating, were unstable. She needed to find a safer location for her camp. Reluctantly, she made her way back to her crash site, her mind racing with the implications of her discovery. As she walked, Sarah's scientific training battled with a growing sense of wonder and unease. She was alone on an alien moon, surrounded by the remnants of an ancient civilization and life forms beyond her comprehension. Her chances of rescue were slim, but the opportunity for discovery was immense. Back at her camp, Sarah began the arduous task of relocating her shelter. She chose a small cave formation, a few hundred meters from the crash site, hoping it would provide better protection from the elements and any future seismic events. As she worked, Sarah's mind turned to the problem of long-term survival. Her rations wouldn't last more than a few weeks, and she had yet to find a reliable water source. She would need to get creative. Inspiration struck as she was examining some of the alien flora she had collected. The vine-like plants she had used in her shelter construction seemed to have water storage properties. When cut, they exuded a clear, slightly sweet liquid. Sarah's hand shook as she ran the liquid through her suit's analysis system. The results made her laugh with relief. Water content 92%, she recorded. Trace minerals present, but no detected toxins. Potential source of hydration identified. With renewed energy, Sarah set about improving her living situation. She created water storage containers from salvaged ship components and began collecting and purifying the plant liquid. She also discovered that some of the larger bioluminescent organisms, when removed from the ground, continued to glow for several hours, providing a source of light for her cave. As the alien sun set on her second day on the moon, Sarah felt a mix of emotions. Fear and loneliness warred with scientific excitement and a growing sense of accomplishment. She had survived another day and made significant discoveries. But as she settled into her new shelter, watching the strange constellations appear in the indigo sky, she couldn't help but wonder, what other secrets did this alien moon hold? And would she live long enough to uncover them? The tremors in the ground and the pulsing light of the bioluminescent life served as a constant reminder that she was a stranger in a very alien world. Yet, as sleep finally claimed her, Sarah's last thoughts were not of despair, but of determination. She was a human, adaptable, resourceful, and endlessly curious. Whatever challenges this moon had in store, she would face them head-on, armed with her intelligence and her unwavering will to survive. Unexpected contact. The alien sun had risen and set 14 times since Sarah Chen's crash landing on PC-7. Each day brought new challenges and discoveries, testing the limits of her ingenuity and resolve. Her makeshift camp, nestled in a shallow cave near the crash site, had slowly transformed into a functional, if Spartan, research station. Sarah's datapad chirped, alerting her to an anomalous energy reading. She frowned, tapping the holographic display to enhance the data stream. Over the past few days, she had detected intermittent energy spikes emanating from somewhere to the north. Each spike was slightly stronger than the last, defying any natural explanation she could think of. Personal log, Day 15. Sarah spoke into her datapad as she packed her survey gear. "I'm going to investigate the source of the energy readings. If I'm right, this could be evidence of something. Whether it's related to the ruins or something else entirely, I can't say. But it's the best leave I've had since I crashed here." She paused, a wry smile crossing her face. "And hey, if it turns out to be a working comm array, I certainly wouldn't complain." The journey north was arduous. The terrain grew increasingly rugged, with sharp crystalline formations jutting out of the ground like the spines of some colossal beast. Sarah's modified environment suit, patched together from her original gear and salvaged ship components, whirred softly as it worked to maintain a stable internal atmosphere. As she crested a particularly steep ridge, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Spread out before her was a vast canyon, its walls glittering with veins of an iridescent, unknown mineral. But it wasn't the natural beauty that held her attention. At the center of the canyon, partially obscured by swirling mists, stood a structure that was unmistakably artificial. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, her scientist's mind already racing to catalog what she was seeing. The structure was unlike the ruins she had encountered near her crash site. This was intact, its sleek, curved surfaces gleaming in the alien sunlight. Occasional pulses of energy rippled across its exterior, coinciding with the spikes she had detected on her instruments. Sarah's heart pounded as she began her descent into the canyon. Was this some kind of automated facility left behind by the long-vanished alien civilization? Or could it be something else entirely? The implications were staggering. As she drew closer to the structure, Sarah's instruments began to go haywire. The energy readings were off the charts, and her datapad screen flickered with interference. She pressed on, driven by a mixture of scientific curiosity and the desperate hope that this facility might somehow aid in her rescue. At the base of the structure, Sarah discovered what appeared to be an entrance, a smooth oval opening that pulsed with a soft, blue light. She hesitated for just a moment before stepping forward. After all she had been through, fear was a luxury she could no longer afford. The moment she crossed the threshold, Sarah's world exploded into light and sensation. It felt as if every atom in her body was being scanned, analyzed, and reassembled. She tried to cry out, but no sound escaped her lips. Just as suddenly as it began, the sensation ended, leaving Sarah gasping and disoriented. As her vision cleared, Sarah found herself in a vast, domed chamber. The walls were covered in intricate, swirling patterns that seemed to shift and move when she wasn't looking directly at them. At the center of the room stood a pillar of pulsating energy, tendrils of light reaching out like the branches of a cosmic tree. "Hello," Sarah called out, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Is anyone here?" In response, the chamber came alive with movement. From recesses in the walls emerged dozens of small bioluminescent creatures. They floated through the air with graceful, undulating motions, their bodies glowing with a soft, blue-green light. Sarah stood rooted to the spot, her scientific mind warring with the sheer impossibility of what she was seeing. The creatures drew closer, forming a loose circle around her. Then, without warning, a voice spoke directly into her mind. "We greet you, star traveler." Sarah staggered, overwhelmed by the sudden telepathic contact. The voice, or rather, voices, for it seemed to be a composite of many, was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It carried with it a sense of ancient wisdom and profound curiosity. "Who? What are you?" Sarah managed to ask, her own voice sounding strange and hollow in comparison to the mental communication. "We are the Lumini," came the reply, "the last of our kind on this moon. We have waited long for one such as you to arrive." As the initial shock wore off, Sarah's training kicked in. She was a scientist, an explorer, and this was first contact with an alien species. It was everything she had ever dreamed of and more. "I'm Lieutenant Sarah Chenevert," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I came here to study the possibility of microbial life. I never imagined. I mean, your civilization. It's incredible. A ripple of what Sarah could only interpret as amusement passed through the gathered lumini. Our civilization, as you call it, is but a shadow of what it once was. We are the caretakers, the guardians of knowledge left behind by those who came before. Over the next few hours, Sarah engaged in a crash course on Lumini history and culture. Through a combination of telepathic communication and vivid mental imagery, she learned that the Lumini were not the builders of the ruin she had discovered, but rather the descendants of a servant race created by that long-vanished civilization. The facility she had stumbled upon was a repository of knowledge and technology, preserving the legacy of a species that had achieved wonders Sarah could scarcely comprehend. But for all their advanced technology, the Lumini were trapped, bound to the slowly failing systems of their ancestral home. As the initial flood of information subsided, Sarah found herself grappling with a mix of emotions: awe at the discoveries she had made, excitement at the potential for learning, and a growing sense of responsibility. The Lumini had revealed themselves to her, breaking millennia of isolation. What did that mean for her? For humanity? "We have watched you since your arrival, Sarah Chen," the Lumini communicated. "Your resilience, your ingenuity, your unquenchable curiosity. These are traits we once saw in our creators. We believe you may be the key to our salvation, and perhaps we to yours." Sarah's mind reeled at the implications. "I'm not sure I understand. How can I possibly help you? And what do you mean, my salvation?" "Our systems are failing," came the somber reply. "The energy that sustains us, that powers this facility, is nearly depleted. We lack the physical form necessary to enact repairs or find new solutions. But you, with your adaptable body and problem-solving mind, might succeed where we cannot." The Lumine's glow dimmed slightly, a gesture Sarah interpreted as hesitation or perhaps embarrassment. "As for your salvation, we may lack the ability to repair our own systems, but we do possess knowledge that could aid in your rescue. Perhaps, working together, we might find a way to benefit us both." Sarah stood in silence for a long moment, processing everything she had learned. When she finally spoke, her voice was filled with determination. "I'm just one human, alone on an alien moon. I'm not sure if I can be the savior you're hoping for, but I'm a scientist, an explorer, and I never back down from a challenge. Whatever knowledge or skills I have, they're at your disposal. Let's see what we can accomplish together." The Lumine's glow brightened, their collective voice resonating with hope and excitement in Sarah's mind. As they began to share more detailed information about their systems and the challenges they faced, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose wash over her. She had come to PC-7 seeking signs of microbial life. Instead, she had found an ancient, dying civilization in need of help. It was far more than she had ever bargained for, but as she stood there, surrounded by the bioluminescent lumini in their wondrous facility, Sarah knew one thing for certain: her greatest adventure was just beginning. Human ingenuity meets alien technology. The days that followed Sarah Chen's first contact with the Lumini were a whirlwind of activity and discovery. The alien facility had become her new base of operations, its vast halls and chambers a far cry from the cramped confines of her crashed ship or the makeshift cave shelter. Sarah stood before a holographic display, her brow furrowed in concentration as she manipulated complex schematics with gestures that were becoming more natural by the day. The Lumini floated nearby, their soft glow pulsing in time with the facility's energy fluctuations. "You grasp our technology with remarkable speed, Sarah Chen." The collective voice of the Lumini resonated in her mind. "Yet the core problem remains unsolved." Sarah nodded, a wry smile playing on her lips. "Well, I've had some pretty good teachers," she replied. "But you're right. We're missing something fundamental here." The problem was as complex as it was critical. The Lumine's entire existence depended on the energy core at the heart of the facility. This core, a marvel of engineering that had sustained them for millennia, was finally showing signs of imminent failure. Without it, the Lumini would fade away, taking with them the last vestiges of their creator's legacy. Okay, let's break this down one more time, Sarah said, her voice taking on the determined tone that had become familiar to the Lumini. The core's function is based on harnessing energy from subspace fluctuations, right? But the mechanism for attracting and containing those fluctuations is degrading. Correct, the Lumini confirmed. Our creators designed the system to be self-repairing, but the unique materials required for that process were depleted centuries ago. Sarah paced the room, her mind racing. This was the kind of challenge she lived for. A seemingly impossible problem with lives hanging in the balance. It was moments like these that humanity's unique brand of creative problem-solving truly shone. What if, she began slowly, an idea taking shape, we approach this from a completely different angle. Instead of trying to repair the existing mechanism, what if we create a new one that serves the same function? The Lumine's glow flickered, a sign Sarah had come to recognize as surprise or intrigue. An interesting proposition. But how would you accomplish this without access to the original materials or manufacturing processes? Sarah's eyes lit up with excitement. By combining your advanced theoretical knowledge with good old-fashioned human ingenuity. We might not be able to recreate the original component exactly, but maybe we can jury-rig something that works just as well. Over the next several hours, Sarah and the Lumini engaged in a fascinating exchange of ideas. The aliens shared complex theories about subspace dynamics and energy manipulation, concepts that pushed the boundaries of Sarah's scientific understanding. In return, Sarah introduced them to human approaches to engineering and improvisation. It's like MacGyvering, Sarah explained, chuckling at the Lumini's confusion. Taking whatever materials you have on hand and using them in unconventional ways to solve problems. It's a very human trait. As they worked, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the situation. Here she was, millions of kilometers from Earth, collaborating with an alien species to save their civilization using a mix of highly advanced science and what essentially amounted to clever tinkering. It was simultaneously awe-inspiring and absurdly human. The breakthrough came 3 days later. Sarah had been experimenting with combining salvaged parts from her ship with crystals found in the canyon, attempting to create a makeshift energy amplifier. The Lumini had been skeptical at first, but as Sarah's prototype began to show promising results, their excitement grew palpable. This is unprecedented, the Lumini communicated as they observed Sarah's handiwork. The energy output is crude compared to our original systems, but the underlying principle is sound. With refinement, this could indeed serve as a replacement for the failing core components. Sarah grinned, wiping sweat from her brow. Sometimes you need an outside perspective to see new solutions. Now comes the tricky part, scaling this up and integrating it with your existing systems without causing a catastrophic failure. The integration process was a delicate dance of human intuition and alien precision. Sarah's experience with jury-rigging solutions in hostile environments proved invaluable as they worked to adapt her prototype to the massive scale of the Lumine's energy core. There were setbacks, of course. Twice, energy surges threatened to overwhelm the facility's safeguards, forcing Sarah and the Lumini to rapidly recalibrate their approach. But with each near disaster came new insights, refinements to the design that brought them closer to success. As they worked, Sarah found herself growing closer to the Lumini. The aliens' vast knowledge and different way of perceiving the universe constantly challenged her assumptions, pushing her to think in new ways. In turn, the Lumini seemed fascinated by Sarah's ability to make intuitive leaps and find unconventional solutions. Your species' adaptability is remarkable, the Lumini observed one day as Sarah welded a particularly tricky component into place. In the face of the unknown, you do not hesitate to experiment, to try new approaches. It is a quality our creators valued highly. Sarah paused in her work, considering the comment. I suppose it's born out of necessity, she replied. Humans have always had to adapt to survive. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we're really good at figuring out new ways to overcome challenges. The final test came merely 2 weeks after Sarah's initial breakthrough. The makeshift energy amplifier, now refined and integrated into the core systems, hummed with power. Sarah stood before the main control panel, her hand hovering over the activation switch. "Are you certain about this, Sarah Chen?" the Lumini asked, their collected voice tinged with a mix of hope and apprehension. If this fails, the energy backlash could be catastrophic. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself. "We've triple-checked every calculation, tested every component. It's as ready as it's ever going to be. Sometimes you just have to take the leap." With a silent prayer to whatever forces might be listening, Sarah flipped the switch. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum that quickly built to a resonant thrum, the core sprang to life. Energy coursed through the facility, more stable and vibrant than it had been in centuries. The Luminae's glow brightened to an almost blinding intensity, their joy and relief washing over Sarah in waves. "It works. By all that we hold sacred, it works. You've done it, Sarah Chen. You've saved us." Sarah laughed, a sound of pure elation and disbelief. "We did it," she corrected, her voice thick with emotion. This was a team effort, through and through. As the revitalized energy core stabilized the entire facility, Sarah felt a profound sense of accomplishment wash over her. She had come to this alien moon as an explorer and scientist, hoping to find microscopic life. Instead, she had saved an entire civilization and pushed the boundaries of both human and Lumini knowledge in the process. But even as she celebrated this monumental achievement, a small part of Sarah's mind turned to the future. The Luminae were saved, yes, but she was still stranded on an alien moon, millions of kilometers from home. As if sensing her thoughts, the Luminae's voice resonated in her mind once more. "You have given us new life, Sarah Chen. Now, let us see what we can do about getting you home." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude and anticipation. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew that the combination of human ingenuity and alien technology would be more than up to the task. Her greatest adventure, it seemed, was far from over. The rescue and beyond. The revitalized Lumini facility hummed with an energy it hadn't known in millennia. In the weeks following the successful integration of Sarah Chen's makeshift energy amplifier, the alien structure had undergone a remarkable transformation. Systems long dormant sparked to life, and the Lumini themselves seemed to glow with renewed vigor. Sarah stood before a holographic star map, her eyes tracing the vast distances between PC-7 and Earth. The Lumini floated nearby, their bioluminescent bodies pulsing gently in the dim light. "The beacon is ready, Sarah Chen." The collected voice of the Lumini resonated in her mind. "With the power restored to our long-range communications array, we can now broadcast your distress signal across a much wider range." Sarah nodded, a mix of hope and trepidation swirling in her chest. "Let's do it," she said, her voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. With a gesture, she activated the beacon. The facility thrummed as it channeled enormous amounts of energy into the signal. Sarah watched in awe as the holographic display visualized the transmission's path, stretching out across the star systems between PC-7 and human-controlled space. "And now we wait," Sarah murmured, more to herself than to the Lumini. The waiting proved to be the hardest part. Days stretched into weeks as Sarah divided her time between further repairs to the facility and continued study of Lumini technology and culture. She found herself marveling at how much her life had changed in such a short time. What had begun as a routine research mission had transformed into a journey beyond her wildest dreams. It was during one of her daily check-ins with the communications array that Sarah received the response she had been hoping for. "This is the UES Horizon responding to an unregistered distress beacon." A crackling voice emerged from the speakers, causing Sarah to jump in surprise. "Please identify yourself and state the nature of your emergency." Sarah's hands shook as she keyed the response. "This is Lieutenant Sarah Chen of the Earth research vessel Curiosity. I've crash-landed on the moon designated PC-7 in the Proxima Centauri system, and you're not going to believe what I found here. The next few hours were a flurry of activity as Sarah relayed her situation to the Horizon's crew. She could sense the disbelief in their voices as she described her encounter with the Lumini and the incredible alien facility she now called home. Lieutenant Chen, the Horizon's captain, spoke, his voice a mix of concern and barely contained excitement. We're plotting a course to your location now. ETA is approximately 72 hours. In the meantime, we're contacting Earth Central Command to brief them on the situation. This is, well, it's unprecedented. As Sarah ended the communication, she turned to the assembled Lumini, her eyes shining with unused tears. They're coming, she said simply. Humanity is coming to PC-7. The Luminae's response was a wave of emotion so powerful it nearly overwhelmed Sarah's senses. Joy, apprehension, curiosity, and a dozen other feelings she couldn't quite name washed over her. This marks the beginning of a new era. The Lumini communicated. The isolation we have known for so long is coming to an end. We owe this all to you, Sarah Chen. Sarah shook her head, smiling. We owe it to each other. None of this would have been possible if we hadn't worked together. This is the power of cooperation, of bringing different perspectives and strengths together. The 72 hours leading up to the Horizon's arrival were some of the most surreal of Sarah's life. She worked tirelessly with the Luminae to prepare for humanity's first official contact with their species. They compiled data, prepared presentations, and discussed protocols for interaction. As the appointed time drew near, Sarah made her way to the surface, her heart pounding with anticipation. The Luminae, venturing outside their facility for the first time in eons, accompanied her, their bioluminescent bodies creating a breathtaking display against the alien sky. The Horizon's arrival was heralded by a distant roar that grew steadily louder. Sarah watched, awestruck, as the massive ship broke through the clouds, its sleek form a testament to human engineering prowess. As the ship touched down and the boarding ramp extended, Sarah felt a moment of surreal disconnection. After so long alone, or as alone as one could be while surrounded by alien life, the sight of other humans was almost shocking. Captain Elena Rodriguez was the first to disembark, her eyes wide as she took in the assembled Lumini. Lieutenant Chen, she said, her voice filled with wonder. When you said we wouldn't believe it, you weren't kidding. What followed was a whirlwind of introductions, explanations, and barely contained excitement on both sides. The Horizon's crew, a mix of military personnel and civilian scientists, were beside themselves with the magnitude of the discovery. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the ship's lead xenobiologist, could barely contain her excitement as she conversed with the Lumini through Sarah. The implications of this discovery are staggering, she exclaimed. An entirely new form of sentient life, with technology beyond our current understanding. This changes everything. As the initial shock wore off, the real work began. Over the next several days, human and Luminae delegates worked tirelessly to establish the groundwork for future relations. Sarah found herself at the center of it all, acting as a bridge between the two species. We're not just talking about scientific exchange, Captain Rodriguez said during one of the many planning sessions. This is about forging a lasting alliance between our peoples. The Luminae have knowledge and technology that could revolutionize our understanding of the universe, and we have the resources and drive to help rejuvenate their civilization. The Luminae, for their part, seemed equally enthused about the prospects of this new partnership. For too long, we have been caretakers of a legacy we could no longer fully utilize, they communicated. With humanity's help, we can not only preserve the knowledge of our creators but build upon it, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. As the days wore on, the scope of the joint human-Lumini venture grew. Plans were made for a permanent research station on PC-7, with regular supply runs and personnel rotations from Earth. The Lumini facility would serve as the heart of this new outpost, a place where the best minds of both species could work together to unlock the secrets of the universe. On the eve of the Horizon's departure back to Earth, where it would carry news of the monumental discovery, Sarah found herself standing once again at the spot where she had first crashed on PC-7. The twisted wreckage of the Curiosity lay half-buried in the alien soil, a monument to the unexpected journey that had led her to this moment. Captain Rodriguez approached, placing a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You know, Lieutenant, they're already calling you a hero back on Earth. The woman who made first contact, who saved an alien civilization. They'll probably write books about you." Sarah chuckled, shaking her head. "I'm no hero, Captain. I'm a scientist who got lucky. Very, very lucky." "Lucky or not," Rodriguez replied, "you've changed the course of human history. Hell, you've changed the course of 2 civilizations. What you've achieved here, it's the kind of thing we all dream about when we sign up for deep space missions." As they stood there, gazing out at the alien landscape, Sarah felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. She had come to PC-7 seeking evidence of microbial life, and had instead found an advanced civilization in need of help. Through cooperation, innovation, and sheer human determination, she had not only survived but thrived, forging a connection between humanity and the Lumini that would reshape the future of both species. "Sarah Chen," the voice of the Lumini whispered in her mind, "you came to us as a stranger from the stars, and you leave as a bridge between worlds. Know that you will always have a home here among us." Sarah smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion as she looked out at the horizon. The sun was setting on PC-7, painting the sky in hues of purple and gold. But for humanity and the Lumini, a new dawn was just beginning. Whatever challenges the future held, they would face them together, united by the unquenchable spirit of exploration and the power of unexpected friendships forged across the stars.